In this video, I'm going to be talking about automations and ActiveCampaign, and specifically how to actually create an automation in ActiveCampaign. So first of all, what is an automation? An automation in ActiveCampaign is basically a step-by-step process that you're going to put a contact through, and I'll show you this on the tool itself, where each person is going to get a very specific thing. So for example, if somebody is opting in for a landing page or to a lead magnet or to some sort of a maybe free thing that you've given them, you're going to tag them or do some sort of an action to bring somebody into the automation, and then you're going to send them the welcome email, maybe wait a day, send them another email, etc., etc. And so there's a certain number of steps, so there's certain things that you want to send people through the automation. This makes it easy for you to send emails without having to do it manually, so you don't have to remember stuff. And then also you can prepare content ahead of time and have those sequences dripped out to people. So one example is if you have a webinar, and let's actually create a webinar sequence or webinar automation inside of ActiveCampaign right now. So I'm going to go to my screen share and I'm going to show you on ActiveCampaign how to actually do this. So you're going to go to automations when you log in, and this is my my account. And what you're going to do is wait for it to load up. And in order to create an automation, there's a button in the top right corner here that says create an automation. Now I've got recommendations off here, but ActiveCampaign will recommend different automations if you need to. And so the example I gave you was to create a webinar. So let's say in the recipe, because ActiveCampaign has already got a couple of recipes or sort of automations that are already pre-built. And so if I type the word webinar in here, you're going to have webinar reminder series, which is a series of emails. So maximize your webinar's attendance by using the automation to remind your contacts, blah, blah, blah. You're reminding people once they register for a webinar to attend the webinar, right? That's what that series or automation is for. A webinar follow-up is the webinar sequence or the automation that you're going to send after the webinar to do a certain thing. So it says follow up with your contacts after your webinar is finished. Use this drip series to give your contacts, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so these are the two recipes that are here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up, let's say, a reminder series. And let's just walk you through the steps here very, very quickly. Okay, so ActiveCampaign is busy loading up the wizard. What you're going to do is you're going to click the get started and it's going to walk you through a bunch of things. So if I hit get started here, it's now asking for when is the date of the webinar, right? So this automation requires a date custom field that's populated with the date of the webinar. So you have to have a webinar date pre-programmed, which is a date field, as a merge field to have the automation use so that it knows when to send the emails. So this particular step or this goal is using this webinar date 30 days before. And there's lots of like reasons why ActiveCampaign has set this up this way, but this is 30 days before the webinar. And you can obviously read the text there in the wizard. All right, so this goal references the custom date, again, webinar date, and this is the 14-day reminder email. The next step in the wizard is the 7-day reminder email. So again, the webinar date. And the reason why it's using webinar date is because ActiveCampaign needs to know what the date of the webinar is so that it can actually send the emails on the right day. So this is the day before. And now it's going to be the email on the day, right? So the goal references the custom date. And there we're done. So if we go through this automation, and obviously you've got to customize certain things. So for example, your trigger, this is the thing that's going to kick the sequence off, is going to be the contact subscribes to any list. And we don't want to do that because we want to have a specific list. So my recommendation is to have some sort of like a webinar list. You know, I've got like webinar registrants or something to do with registrations. This is my normal process. So maybe I've got this webinar coming up. So I'm going to use the webinar registrations list. The other option you can use is a tag. So maybe it's webinar registered. my normal thing is like put the name of the webinar beforehand, and then the webinar registered in the tag name. But since I don't have any tags added specifically for any webinars, I'm going to skip this step. But basically, when you trigger an automation with a tag, then that's all you need to trigger that automation. So I'm going to cancel out of this for now because I've already got this step here. And now usually people wouldn't have like a 30-day reminder because usually people are setting up their webinars 5, 10, 15 days before. So what you would do is on this specific recipe from ActiveCampaign is you could either delete this goal or you could change it to be a date that's more appropriate. And the way to do that is to click on this goal editor and change this to not 30 days before, but maybe you do 10 days before or 8 days before or 7 days, whatever the case may be. Now, obviously, you've got to be mindful of the fact that the following, right, the emails and the steps after this specific event or after the, that follow the sequence, follow the automation, are timed appropriately. So you got to make sure of that. So this is the 30-day, this is the 2-week. And basically ActiveCampaign has set this up so that it's going to send emails out in the context time zone, which is at 9 a.m. Now, if you've got people opting in from Europe, but your webinar is set for, let's say, Eastern time zone in the US, then you definitely want to edit this. So edit this to have, instead of the context time zone, you would change it to, let's search for time, and you would put it to your time zone, or you would set it to a specific time, right? So just be mindful of that. And maybe because I'm in Thailand, I would set Asia Bangkok, and maybe it'll be 9 p.m. for me, which was equivalent to, I think, 10 a.m. Eastern time, whatever the case may be. All right, so I'm going to leave that as it was. And then, you'd follow the sequence. So let's say, for example, somebody opts in from this. So let's say you have somebody register the webinar. So let's walk through this automation. So you're going to have somebody subscribe to the list because that's what we are going to use when people opt in to the landing page or to Zoom or whatever the case may be, wherever they're registering. You're going to have them come into ActiveCampaign, and I'm not covering that. That'll be in another video. So subscribe to the channel for that. But you're going to have them enter this automation from the list. Then we're going to set a goal so that ActiveCampaign is going to stop them and wait until 30 days before the webinar. Again, you could change this later on. When it hits the 30 days before, let's say, so it's 30 days before the webinar, it's going to send people through that step and wait for 9 a.m. Then at 9 a.m., it's going to go to the next step, which is to send this email. And so again, you can open up the email, you can edit the email, and I'm not going to do an email editing tutorial right now, but basically you would edit this email in the same way. So you're going to pick a template, you're going to pick a specific design maybe that you have from before, and you're going to go through this process of actually putting the email into the automation. I'm not going to go through that right now, but the steps to actually create the email are exactly the same as you would a normal campaign. So once that email is set up, then you're going to say, okay, 2 weeks before the webinar, ActiveCampaign is going to wait for the person 2 weeks before the webinar at 9 a.m., send this email, and then wait for 1 week before the webinar. Normally, from a marketing point of view, I would normally recommend that if you're setting your webinar up, let's say 2 weeks before the webinar or 1 week before the webinar, that you email people at least 5 days before, 3 days before, 2 days before, 1 day before, the morning of, an hour before, and then 15 minutes before your webinar. Now, inside of ActiveCampaign, it's a little bit tricky to do that, but using goals and a combination of wait times. So like we have this wait time that's going to 9 a.m., right? Let's say your webinar is not at 9 a.m., it's at 9:30. So you could set up a wait thing here under the conditions and set it for a specific period of time. So you would do 30 and you change days 2 minutes. So now because your webinar is starting at 9:30, let's say your webinar is at 10 and you want to email them the 30 minutes before, that's what you would do. Obviously, because this is 30 minutes before the day before, that doesn't make sense. Okay, and then one thing I would also do is I would add a wait time here at the end, just from a suggestions point of view. I would add a further wait time here, let's say like a week or 2 weeks after the webinar, just to make sure. Like sometimes, people would drop off at the end, or sometimes an extra wait time just to see where people are in the sequence can be useful. And then if you needed to, for example, add different types of actions, right? Let's say you wanted to add a slightly different tag. Let's say you've got this person going into this list and you wanted to add a tag as well, because you wanted to maybe do a webinar name. So you could do something like this: webinar name, whatever the name of the webinar is, and then maybe the date of the webinar, right? So that person is now has the list, and they're also tagged, because sometimes you would have like a webinar registrations list like I have here, and then I would tag the person with the date and the name of the webinar that they are going to attend. So that might be something that would be interesting for your specific use case. Maybe you want to send SMSs to your list as well. So when they opt in, and maybe they opt in with a phone number as well, you can set up an integration here where you send an SMS with Twilio, or you send an SMS with any of these other tools. You just drag this over and stick it in the automation depending on where you want to send it. So let's say, for example, you send an SMS maybe 30 minutes before the webinar, then you would put the 30-minute timer and you would add in the SMS thing in between in this automation. And that's how you would actually create an automation in ActiveCampaign. If you like the video, definitely hit the like. And if you like the channel, if you like this type of content, definitely hit the subscribe as well. Obviously, if you have any questions with regards to your automations, you can pop it in the comments section. And definitely check out the next video in the sequence, where I've actually gone and done a 40-minute video or in-depth training, which is a beginner's guide to ActiveCampaign as well. But it goes into a little bit more detail on some of the other functionality of ActiveCampaign if you are a beginner and you need a little bit more help with ActiveCampaign. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.